Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the council. As the mayor introduced, the item before you this evening is our final report of Phase 1 of the city's Intermodal Transit Center project. For those who have been following the project for the course of its duration of about the last 8 or 9 months, the Intermodal Transit Center project is envisioned as being a transit facility featuring administrative and passenger service areas, exterior covered passenger boarding areas, and bicycle parking facilities and secure transit vehicle parking that will serve as a link between transportation service providers to facilitate the seamless integration of transportation services on the Palouse. And really the objective of the project was to develop a centralized transit center that would serve those providers that are currently providing transportation services on the Palouse. Those include Moscow Valley Transit provides both fixed route and dial ride services within the community. Northwestern Trailways that provides our regional connections from the Boise Valley on up into the Coeur d'Alene and Spokane corridor, as well as Wheatland Express that provides an intercity connection between the city of Moscow and the city of Pullman and the WSU and U of I campus facilities, as well as the university that operates the Vandal Access Shuttle that provides transportation services on the University of Idaho campus core, and then the city's van pool program that we currently coordinate and operate. Transit with fixed route transits within the community is actually a fairly recent development. Fixed route service began in 2004, but since that time we've had experienced a 400% increase in ridership from 2004 to 2010. With average annual increases of 20% per year. Starting off in 2004 with 34,462 rides provided on the fixed route service, and finishing the calendar year of 2010 with 143,284 rides. And it sounds like right now Moscow Valley Transit is on a path to break 180,000 rides on fixed route service for the current year of 2011. So we have seen continual and significant growth in ridership on the fixed route service. It is estimated that we have really 80% of those riders are affiliated with the University of Idaho, either staff, faculty, or students within the community. And many of those routes are near capacity during some of those peak service periods. And Elisa, as she mentioned under that grant application that was before the council here earlier this evening, we are looking at acquiring larger transit vehicles that would have greater seating capacity to be able to accommodate the increase in utilization that we've seen over the last several years. When it comes to public transit infrastructure development, though, we've seen a fair investment, and Les gave reports of the round 2 of the stimulus transit improvements. Over the past 3 years, we've installed 13 bus shelters, and we've constructed over 2,000 lineal feet of sidewalk to provide safe access to transit stop and service points, and we've constructed over 30 ADA pedestrian drops to enhance transit accessibility. And with the Phase 2 project that the council just awarded the contract, we'll continue to see additional investments in shelters, sidewalks, and accessibility to transit facilities within the community. But one of the more significant remaining needs is to better integrate the van pools, local fixed route services, intercity and campus and regional transportation providers, and provide a base of operations for our local transit provider within the community. And currently the transit vehicles are parked out at the fairgrounds. There is no facility for the drivers to utilize for breaks or restroom facilities, and the administrative offices of Moscow Valley Transit are located 30 miles to the south in Lewiston. So certainly the establishment of the base of operations within the Moscow Valley Transit is one of the significant elements of the project as it is proposed. Currently, from project funding's perspective, we have about $2 million that has been secured in federal transit grant funding, including some existing 5309 transit grants, as well as that $1.5 million Tiger II grant that has been approved to the city. We also have $186,000 of city match funding going into the project, and $125,000 of that is the $1,000 of those funds is the money that Lisa was speaking to that is currently uncommitted to any other grant for a match, and what's being proposed for the upcoming grant application. And we also have several additional pending grant requests. The one that Lisa gave you the briefing on this evening, as well as we anticipate we will also make a Tiger III application as that program becomes announced for public applications in the next month. So we're looking forward to making an application for there as well. When we began the project, we broke it out into two phases. Phase 1, which is the final report this evening, was focused on facility programming, so trying to understand what the building looked like, how large it needed to be, what components it needed to include. We also included a site selection process to identify where this facility should be located within the community. And we developed a concept design, both interior for the schematic floor plan layout as well as the architectural design of the facility. And then we concluded with developing the cost estimate, both the construction cost and then the long-term operational cost estimate for the project. And then an additional element that was added once the Tiger 2 grant was awarded, was we also included the environmental review process. We've gone through that initial environmental review that is required under NEPA and with the FTA program. Phase 2 then would pick up where we left off in Phase 1, and it would move into final design for the project and then see us through completion of construction. As we began early in the project, we identified the need for a consultant team. We went through an RFQ process and ultimately selected Design West and WH Pacific and Kittleson Associates as the consultant team for the project, and they're here. I have Tom Jones from WH Pacific and Ned Warnick from Design West here to assist us with the briefing this evening. Progress to date on Phase 1. Early on in the process, we developed a technical advisory committee, or the TAC, as is shown on the screen. Those include representatives of the transit providers that are operating out of the facility, as well as other representatives from the University of Idaho, ASUI, as well as the city's Transportation Commission, to advise and steer the project. And we conducted 5 TAC meetings over the course of the work that we've done so far. We completed the facility program assessment. We did what we called our level 1, 2, and 3 site selection assessments, and we conducted 3 public house open houses over the course of the project. We have selected the preferred site for the facility. We've completed a traffic impact assessment on that site. We've completed the initial facility concept design you'll see this evening. We've refined and improved that from what you saw at the last presentation, and we have finalized the construction and operational cost estimates. As mentioned, we've also completed the environmental review. As I mentioned, one of the early tasks was to form a technical advisory committee that would assist and steer the project. The representatives spent significant amounts of time during the course of those 5 meetings, and they included J.R. Van Tassel as the Executive Director of Regional Public Transportation that operates Moscow Valley Transit, Peg Motley from Wheatland Express, Charlie Neal from Northwestern Trailways, Brett Dillon from the University of Idaho's Architecture and Engineering Services, Carl Root as Director of the University of Idaho's Parking and Transportation Services. We also had Jennifer Barrett as a representative of Latah County Commissioners. Samantha Seifer served as a representative from the Associate Students of the University of Idaho, Mike McGann for the city's Transportation Commission, and Gary Reedner as the city supervisor. So that group was exceptionally helpful in steering the project, providing input and direction as we moved it forward. With that, I will turn over the mic to Tom Jones of WH Pacific to walk us through the facility programming and site selection stage of the project.
Thank you, Bill. And again, I am getting this one, Chris. Very good. Thank you, Madam Mayor and members of the council. I'm going to just briefly walk you through the process that we have gone through in the project, some of the decisions that were made, and then ultimately the conclusions. Before doing that, I just want to say thank you very much. This is really our last presentation for this particular phase. It's been an absolute pleasure working with the staff, particularly Elisa and Bill, on the course of the project. We had a wonderful technical advisory committee. They really were very efficient, very focused, and as a consultant team, they're one of the best that I've worked with. And from just its organization, their knowledge, and again, just working as a team for a common cause to find the solutions, and they were wonderful. And then as well, working with the community in the open houses, very thoughtful questions, very respectful, and it's been an absolute pleasure. So with that, I'll go a little bit on through our process in the project. First of all, we start looking at, as Bill mentioned, we really needed to understand what this facility is all about, understanding particularly what the site components were, the size of the vehicles, staffing, parking requirements, covered bicycle parking, pedestrian movements, etc., understanding the building facility itself, and knowing that, being a multi-tenant type facility, there are going to be some overlaps, if you will, in some of the public spaces. So we've come down to, at least in the program phase, bless you, a total building area of just over 9,000 square feet, and then a covered area, if you will, a canopy area of about 5,000 square feet. So now, okay, we kind of understand what the program's about. We're going to site this within the community. So we start looking at the community map, the transit providers within the community, the various different areas, start really understanding where the users are, the end users, destinations, et cetera, where they'll be going to, and established a set of criteria to look at and evaluate where we could locate some potential sites. 5 sites were identified using criteria such as, again, looking at close proximity to major transportation routes or the service provider routes, the destination locations, or essentially where the users are, sizes of the site, if you will, to be adequate to be able to accommodate such a facility, as well as just the availability of those particular sites. We evaluated each one of those in detail, and then the Technical Advisory Committee looked and voted, see your dots there, their preference in regards to the sites. So you can see sites 3, 4, and 5 were really the predominant favorites. We elected to look at essentially site 3 and 5 as the final 2 that we wanted to look in further detail and do a preliminary design on. 3 within the University of Idaho land, and then site number 5 in a recently redeveloped in a private parcel. So looking at site number 3, you have Sweet Avenue on the right-hand side, entering into the campus. At the bottom, you have Railroad Street. You'll see that's where and this is again the conceptual plan on seeing where the canopy would exist on Railroad. There's an existing transit pull-off along that area, which seemed to really make sense. Overall, Site 3, it's a redevelopment site, as I mentioned, owned by the university. It is set up now for redeveloped as to a parking lot, and those green panels adjacent to Railroad and to Sweet are for future building pads. So again, our facility fits really nicely onto that pre-planned site, if you will. You have the Paradise Creek pedestrian path going along the top diagonally along the creek on the edge of the campus. Really made a lot of sense. Then we start looking at more detail on Site 5, just essentially across the creek to the east. You can see College on your left-hand side there, and then at the top you see Jackson, and that some proposed interchange improvements there. Both sites, and accommodated the buildings well. We had a single story on Site 3, a dual story on Site 5. The transit now and the canopy is on College Street on this particular scheme. Had to provide its own parking, if you will, on site for some of the short-term parking, and the 5 fleet vehicles for the parking and transportation services for the U of I. Pedestrian plaza, we have a pedestrian bridge interlinking the parking lot, if you will, to it. But on this one side, it did, you had to bring a little bit more of the public infrastructure in. There's the railroad tracks that used to be along College Street were removed, and so you'd have to provide a street cross-section through there, as well as a half-street improvement on Asbury that was extended down along the frontage of the site. So the Technical Advisory Committee then looked at analyzing each of the 2 sites with some very specific details, abilities how to accommodate the program, for example, expansion, cost, availability, again, what really suited best for the program. The committee selected site number 3. We have done some further refinements, slight refinements, as we start gaining some input to them. But I think one thing you'll see that the facility sits fairly lightly onto that existing parking lot area and property. The building sits within a say, pre-programmed location. Sits very prominent on the intersection coming into the campus there on Sweet Avenue and Railroad. Nice ease of circulation going through. A lot of infrastructure already right there, set up on either in the front street or in the back parking lot areas, and very minimal amount of impact to the existing parking area. So again, as a site planning standpoint, this site set up very, very well, very nicely. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Ned Warnick now and talk a little bit more about the building evolution on the project itself. Mr. Warnick.
I would echo Tom's comments that the city staff, the city council, the public, and especially the TAC committee were very giving of their time and very helpful in moving us forward on this whole process. And Bill has just done a wonderful job, and I know Elisa has done a great job of finding money for us, so we appreciate all of those things. Since the last time that we've met, the building plan really has not evolved in any sort of dramatic way. The building itself, center button? Okay. The building's still oriented in the same arrangement where the main public lobby is oriented towards the corner of Sweet Avenue and Railroad Street. It services the actual transit platform, the places where transit riders will change buses or get on and off the buses at those locations. So the building has a major public component here, and then the building support spaces are the core, centrally located for efficiency and ease of access. And then I think I was joking earlier in a public forum that fences make good neighbors, and so in this case we use a hall instead of a fence, but the good neighbors here will be the regional public transit doing business as Moscow Valley Transit. Offices and support facilities will be on this side adjacent to the bus platform, and U of I's parking and transportation services will be along the back side oriented towards their parking lots and those sort of features. They both open onto the lobby and will act as major customer service entities that will serve that lobby area. To refresh your memory from the last time that I got to address the council, we looked at several different building forms that could potentially be the way that this building ends up looking, ranging from the traditional university forms, something a little more contemporary, almost bordering on modern or space age, and then a few that were in between. And based upon the input from the public forum, the TAC committee, and the city council, as it turned out, option 4 was the one that was favored fairly heavily. Option 1 did fairly well. Option 2 and 3 didn't really survive too well, but option 4 did quite well. And so in the time that we've been away, we've gone ahead and worked a little bit further on refining this particular design. And so again, it's not a dramatic departure from what you've seen before and what we polled the city council in the last effort, but this one offers a little bit more information in these renderings as to what the building might look like. And so if you can imagine, the red areas would be a brick similar to the brick that's used all over the campus, kind of a red-brown brick that's traditional and to be expected. These elements would be heavy timber wood, something that harkens to our Northwest roots and our timber town background. And then in between these areas would be pre-finished metal panels, and don't think corrugated siding here, think smooth, slick, contemporary type materials. And then lots and lots of glass and window space to bring in daylight. The building's meant to have a contemporary feel. It's meant to make transit appear to be a modern and happening thing here in Moscow, and have a building that has its own identity, and yet at the same time respect that it is close to campus. It is a part of the downtown, expanded downtown core, and so should have materials that look like they belong here in Moscow. And with that, I'll let Bill wrap up the presentation.
So that was the final. Let me scrub my book. So as Ned mentioned, that was the final recommendation of the TAC for the ultimate floor plan, building layout, and architectural design. The one element, then the final remaining task, was for us to work on development of that construction cost estimate. And as the council has, I think the full packet that was included, or the full report that was included as part of the packet this evening. Ultimately, when you include the site development costs, both some street improvements as well as ancillary site improvement costs, and then the building construction cost, the total project is estimated at about $2.7 million. We have about $2.1 million in funding in hand. It's fairly easy for us to work on pulling a little bit of money out of the project, but thus our continued quest for additional grant funding to bring us up to the funding level we'd like to see the project be able to sustain. And really, the 2.7 is an estimate of what the TAC would like to see. We didn't have a cost limit placed upon the technical advisory committee. It was really trying to understand what the needs were, what the space needs were. And so there certainly are some opportunities for us to look at value engineering the project to be able to bring down costs a little bit, but really trying to find additional $300,000 to $500,000 of additional project funding would put us in a very good position to be able to have the project move forward in its current shape and form. Really, some of the next steps beyond securing that additional funding is to secure the university. While the university has been very supportive of the project, and we've received support from the President's Office and the U of I administration, we do need to secure the final approval from the Board of Regents for use of the property for the purposes of constructing the ITC site. Initially, we anticipated approaching the Board of Regents in June, but we just didn't have all the agreements and documents in place to be able to make that. So we're now slated to bring that forward to the Board of Regents at their meeting of August of this year. Upon getting formal approval of the site, we then need to confirm that available funding. And so the program and the grant that Lisa referenced this evening would be have an award cycle that would really work well with the project schedule as it exists so far. So sometime in September to October, we're going to need to understand whether we have adequate funding in hand as we evaluate the project and then move forward into that phase 2. Assuming that we are able to secure that available funding, we'd move forward into phase 2 in September or in October of this fall and work on that final design to put us in a position to bid the project in really that prime bidding time, which is early spring, kind of the January to early February timeframe when contractors are looking to align out their work for the construction season to give the optimum bid results. Then we'd move forward in construction in summer or fall of 2012 and then finishing essentially by the end of that year, probably more likely November to either early December. So with that, I would be happy to try to answer any question that the council may have.
Thank you, Bill. Have we looked into energy efficiency funding sources for some of those too? Or, I mean, is it time to start sending more letters to Congress, to our congressional delegation saying, please support these programs because?
It's certainly what Lisa's going to be busy doing over the course of the next several weeks is securing those letters of recommendation. But yes, we're looking at all avenues for gaining additional funding for the project. That includes some existing 5309 funds that the University of Idaho has currently as well. So.
Great.
We're optimistic we'll be able to fill that little bit of funding gap that we have currently.
Thank you. Wayne, did you have your hand up?
I did, Bill. In our packet, there was a graph, or not a graph, but there's a page that lists projected expenses during the future in dollar amounts. For instance, 10 years down the road, $50,000 for interior finish, and it goes on down. 30 years, roofing interior, $75,000. My question is, those dollar figures, are those in today's dollars, or are those inflated dollars? Today's dollars? Okay.
All based on today's dollars. We do not try to do.
If you'd like to come up here, please. No.
I guess there should have been a disclaimer or footnote on that, but that's all done as today's dollars.
I suspected it was.
Rather than trying to do a future value projection, that's really the only way. I will, as long as I have the podium for a second, that sort of budget is in an ideal world, and I think it's one of the it's a whole graph in the report that really needs a fairly major disclaimer in that in a perfect world, this is the way an institution or a municipality or a University of Idaho or the state of Idaho would maintain their buildings. They would love to be able to budget in this sort of way. And so this results in in round numbers, you're reinvesting in the building at 2% per year. So in 50 years, you've renewed the building completely. And that's kind of an industry rule of thumb is what you would like to do. In reality, I don't have any client that ever is able to fund their facilities reserves in these sort of ways.
True.
So,
thank you.
As a disclaimer.
Other questions or comments for any of our presenters? Sue?
Oh, I still have my question about that large exterior canopy being canted the wrong way for rain coming from the south. And I see $200 and something thousand for that, and I thought, well, if you have to do without something, do without a canopy that doesn't do anything. It's pretty. but it cants the wrong way for the rain. And as you saw, even with the shadows, the sun's like way behind it, so. I still want somebody to prove to me that that's going to be a good rain and weather canopy.
Maybe it'll collect water or grow stuff. Who knows?
I think it's canted so that the wind will pick it up and blow it over the top of the building, so. See that? It's facing southeast, up. So anyway,
Yep.
that's my 2 cents worth.
That is one of the challenges of the site.
Any other
I'd like it
comments?
to be
or
useful.
Questions or useful suggestions?
Bill, has final ownership ever been discussed further than what was discussed at the committee meetings?
We're still finalizing that at this point in time. I would anticipate probably in the next 2 weeks we will have a final decision or resolution or essentially agreed upon arrangement between the city and the university. We've been working closely with the granting agency about their expectations of ownership and operation of the facility, and also with the university to understand their desires to make the project to be the best project it can. I think there's a good likelihood that it will change from the last arrangement that was presented or proposed to the council, but we're still in some discussions with the university, and it'd be a little premature to comment on that at this point in time.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. Bill, how official does the receipt of this report have to be for purposes of your grant funding?
At this point in time, there's no formal action that's necessary from the council. Certainly, anything that we move forward, moving into Phase 2, awarding a contract for professional services for that, and then ultimately for construction will be formal actions for the council. But at this point in time, just acceptance of the report is acceptable.
Okay. And I suggest
Thank you for the
I
report.
would make a motion that we will go ahead and accept the report.
Second.
Awesome. Wayne's motion and Dan's second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed? All right. We happily accept that wonderful report.
Yeah.
Thank
Quite
you.
complete.
Thanks for your presentation.
Even with the awning.
That's right, exactly.
It's all right, we'll just turn it around.